Good morning to you, T. How are you? You good? It's fantastic. Help me say thank you to the Christ Universal Temple Ensemble. To Miss Julie Woods on the saxophone. That is a saxophone. That's a saxophone, right? Saxophone. The Temple musicians. Conducted by Mr. Martin Woods. Directed by Mr. Monte Filon. Thank you all for providing the soundtrack to the transformation of our souls. Thank you for being the music that enters into the place where the words don't always necessarily get to. Thank you for blessing us week after week in ways that we know not of. I want to just applaud you for pushing through the snow to be here. God bless you for doing whatever it took to be here on this morning. I know that it's more challenging for some of us than it is for others of us. And so I just want to celebrate you. I want to celebrate you for being here, for doing what needed to be done in order for you to not only come and get what you need, but in order for you to also add your spiritual consciousness, your soul consciousness to this divine experience that we call fellowship right here at Christ Universal Temple. I'm excited about today's service and the kickoff for this series. This series, Love Languages. And this concept of love languages is taken from Dr. Gary Chapman's more than 30 years of service as a marital counselor. And I believe that there is some fruit in this lesson for us, particularly if you are someone who has relationships. And it doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, right? Understanding your love language gives you the ability to communicate in a way that can be fulfilling. Understanding the love language of those with which you are in relationship with gives you the ability to communicate in ways that are healthy and fulfilling. And so it doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, I believe that this series will give us an opportunity to experience a more fruitful, healthy relationships. And so I think that's a great thing. And I recognize that we are threefold beings. As threefold beings, we are spirit, soul, and body. Is that right? And in recognizing that we are spirit, soul, and body, it is, I think, necessary that each aspect of our being be recognized, fed, and supported so that we can live well-rounded and productive lives. See, any form of teaching that only supports a particular aspect of your being, if you don't get the other aspects of your being supported and rounded out, what you will find is that you are imbalanced in a number of ways. So while you come here for your spiritual reminder, while you come here for your spiritual sustenance, one of the things that we want to make sure that we avoid is making you so spiritually focused that you're no earthly good. Yeah? Because you can be so holy that it will impact the relationships that you have. And there is a very thin line between holiness consciousness and ego consciousness. And so it helps to be able to live life in ways that are well-rounded and supported and successful. One of the ways that you know that you are successful spiritually is that you see that success being manifested in your body. Are you with me? One of the ways that we know that Jesus knew what he was talking about is that he was able to call on what he needed whenever he needed it. And so it's not just enough to be fed spiritually. We always want to be reminded of ourselves as spiritual beings. We want to keep that as the core focus, but then we are also souls. We are living souls. And as living souls, we recognize that this is where the accumulation of the God ideas and what is in the soul and in the psyche is what shows up in our life, world, and affairs. And then we have the body, and the body is really the soul expressing. Say, my body is my soul expressing. So the body is not just this physical organism that you express in. All of the aspects through which you live your life are the expression of your soul. And so then my relationships, while they happen on a physical level, they are actually the expression of my soul. Are you with me? And so we are threefold beings, and so it is important that we be able to recognize, feed, and support the entire man or the entire soul. In order to create healthy relational experiences, we have to remain committed to the ability to communicate in ways that are healthy. See, I believe we all deserve to be in relationships wherein we are appreciated and celebrated and not just tolerated. Somebody say that again. I said, I believe we all deserve to be in relationships wherein we are appreciated and celebrated and not just tolerated. I don't believe that any of our relationships are supposed to be for the sole purpose of people knowing how to just deal with us. I believe that if we have the appropriate level of celebration and appreciation for ourselves, then as we communicate to the world how we handle and see ourselves, then others ought to get the message and report that message back to us in our relationship with them. As Oprah Winfrey says, you are the one who teaches the world how to handle you. And so then, in order to create the kind of healthy relational experiences we desire, we have to first have that relationship with ourselves. Is that right? As spiritual beings, we are all made healthy, whole, and complete. But it is really through the interactions with one another that we all learn to shine more brightly. And so we're hardwired for beautiful, meaning, successful, impactful, significant relationships. This is how we're designed to enjoy these kind of relationships. We all experience 6 primary kinds of relationships. One of the first relationships that we have is the relationship with God. And so let me just give you this. I want to encourage you to condition your relationships to be built upon the foundation of the relationship that you have with God. By that I mean, challenge yourself and the people that you are in relationship with to appreciate one another in the same way that God appreciates you. And if in your relationship with God, God does not love or appreciate you, I want to challenge you to then reevaluate your concept of God. Because I believe somewhere it says that God is love. And those who worship him in spirit and in truth. And if God is love, then God does not know how to be anything other than what God is. And if love is a compassionate and cooperative and kind, then we can expect that God will be compassionate and kind and cooperative. Does that make sense? The second relationship that we have is, again, the relationship with ourselves. What is my relationship with myself? Let me ask it to you another way. Do I like me? When I look at myself in the mirror, what do I see and what do I say about me? Because if I don't like me, then it is profoundly unreasonable to expect anyone else to. And so it is necessary, say necessary. It is necessary that I learn to both like and love me and all of the stuff that comes along with me. If there is something about me that does not work, then it's my responsibility to fix it. Yeah? So the second relationship, primary relationship, is the relationship that I have with myself. The third primary relationship is the relationship that I have with my significant other. And when I'm talking about significant other, as we're talking about it in this series, here is what I want you to think when you hear me say significant other. I mean it the way that we mean it, Doc, when we are doing academic research. In academic research, when you say that a thing is significant or statistically significant, we are saying that that thing did not happen by mistake. I'm giving you something right there. I'm giving you something right there. I just gave you life right there. When we're saying that it is happening, that it is a significant relationship, I'm saying to you that your relationship ought not to be happening by mistake or by chance. I'm saying that we want to be very specific and intentional about how we are moving in our relationships. Are you with me? And so when I'm talking about relationship with significant other, whether that's a spouse or a boo or a mate or whatever, or a partner, whatever you call it, I am suggesting that this relationship not be one that you are into in a way that is not highly intentional. Are you with me? So I'm not talking about your hookup. For those of you who know what that means. If you don't know what that means, that's not for you. The next relationship is the relationship that we have with our parents. And I'm going to talk about this in just a little bit. Because most of us are the product of our past. And most of us quite unconsciously bring our past into our present. And so then it becomes that our past serves as the foundation by which we attempt to shape and live into relationships in the present. So I want to talk about that. I want us to look at that. The next relationship is the child figure connection. And the parent-child relationship is connected. Finally, the friendship connection. And I submit to you that understanding your love language can impact all of these relationships. Are you with me? Now, this is not necessarily a Gary Chapman's assertion. This is the Derrick Wells assertion. So this is not him, this is me. All right? Let's roll. So, as I just said, in relationships, many of us unconsciously bring our past into our present. And as we bring our past into our present, we don't realize that we are living out patterns that have planted themselves in our subconscious nature, and we're just naturally living out patterns. So there are family patterns that we're living out, and we don't realize we're living them out. There are support patterns that we're living out, and we don't realize we're living them out. There are culture patterns and communication patterns. There are relation patterns and trust patterns that we don't realize we are living out. But I submit to you that every pattern that you are using needs to be reevaluated, because you have observed, learned, adopted, and applied a pattern, and you may not be doing it intentionally. So you can be attempting to have a significant relationship with a significant other, but the things that you are saying and doing might be quite haphazard. And these patterns are often transferred from generation to generation. It's something that we've seen mom do and dad do. It's something that mom saw granddad and grandma do. It's like when these newlyweds got married, and as they got married, they decided to have family over. And since the family was coming over, this was their first big dinner, they decided to cook the best meal. And so this new bride decided that she was going to use her mom's brisket recipe. And so the first thing that she did was she cut the ends off the brisket and put it in the pot, cooked it up. When she took it out, they began to eat. Hubby was tasting like, baby, you put your foot in this brisket. It's pretty delicious. He said, but I don't understand why you cut the ends off. Usually that's the best part of brisket. She said, well, that's how my mama used to make it. Just a couple of weeks later, dinner was at Big Mama's house. And so because you can always learn something at Big Mama's foot or at Big Mama's stove, the new bride decided to saddle up next to Big Mama as Big Mama was also preparing this brisket. And sure enough, Big Mama cut the sides off the brisket. And so this observant new bride asked, well, Big Mama, why'd you cut the sides off the brisket? And Big Mama said, that's the only way it can fit into the pot. So Big Mama was doing it because she didn't have a pot that was big enough. You might be doing it because you saw somebody else doing it. So we often adopt dysfunction and we think we are doing it because it is the way it ought to be done, but we don't realize that our circumstances are not necessarily the circumstances of the person that we saw modeling the behavior. That's why parents, adults, we always have to be mindful about the behavior that we are modeling. Because our young people, children on up to young adults, are seeing everything that we're doing. And from that, they are taking their notes on how it is they are supposed to do it. Is that right? So then for most of us, sabotaging behavior is learned and reinforced through the repetition of doing a thing that we just learned by observing and learning and adopting and applying what we saw somebody else do. What this might mean to you is that if the relationship of your mom and dad fell into the 50% of divorces as most first-time marriages fall into, then it might be that we just adopt certain things that could be self-fulfilling prophecy for how our relationship ends up. So maybe y'all didn't have to get divorced if you hadn't learned bad lessons. Are you with me? Is this all right? All right. So it's important to remember that oftentimes a sabotaging behavior is learned and reinforced through our repetition. So if you were raised in a household where disputes were settled by whoever could shout the loudest, when there is a dispute or conflict, you might notice that just right away your voice gets louder. And the more your mate moves out of how they are conditioned, and the more you move out of how you were conditioned, if they were conditioned to shout, and you were conditioned to shout, and they shout and you 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 shout, and the only thing you all do is get louder, but you don't open the space for a creative solution, then you think you have a problem when what you don't have is a problem, but you have conditioning. And our conditioning will impact the creative ability to solve our problems. Are you still with me? And so then, because when children become adults, they create relationships in ways that are similar to how they witness them. Gary Chapman says that he's amazed at how often people bring what was messed up in yesterday into the new day. But what he does in love languages is he breaks down and decodes different ways in which people communicate with their significant other. He says that he takes the mystery out of what your mate needs. Right? He takes the mystery out of what your mate needs. And so in his experience, he noticed that there are just certain patterns by which people communicate their needs, even if they are not consciously communicating their needs. I want to say that again. He suggests that there are patterns by which we are communicating our needs, even if we are not consciously communicating our needs. See, it's difficult to communicate a need that you are not consciously aware that you have. Right? Chester, it's challenging for me to say to my mate, here is what I want, when I don't necessarily know what I want looks like. Are you with me? Yes. And so I can be expecting you to do something, but I haven't yet communicated to you that this is what I need for you to do. So I can be operating as if it is a deal breaker and making all kind of assumptions about the degree to which you love me when I haven't clearly said to you that really what I want you to say to me is I love you. I don't want your gift. I want you to say I love you. Right? Keep the ring, hold my hand when we're walking down the street. Are you with me? And so he's suggesting that there are just some patterns by which we communicate what our needs are, but it helps to know, say helps to know, what you want. So then, as we are moving into this, I just want to say to you at the top that when we're talking about communication, put this in your notes. Communication is a symbolic process. Communication is a symbolic process. Communication is a symbolic process whereby meaning is produced, maintained, repaired, and transformed. Communication is a symbolic process. See, what I'm saying to you is that oftentimes when we are communicating in symbols. We may not realize that we are communicating in symbols, but a symbol does not mean the same thing to everybody. The same symbol is not viewed the same way by everybody. If I draw a cross for some of us, that means one thing. If I draw a cross for others of us, that means something else. Yeah? And so if we are communicating through symbols, we are constantly building, repairing, and transforming messages which might have us or might not have us on the same page. Are you still with me? Yes. So then, most of us are growing up with the language of our parents and our siblings. And we can learn a second language or an additional language, but it takes a great deal of effort to learn a second language. I was at one point I was learning Swahili. And I got up to and through Alafia Andugu. Amani Angu Undugu. I got through that part. That's about it. Because the effort that it took, hear me, because the effort that it took to learn the additional language challenged me and pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and it required more of me than I was willing to invest. I want you to hear me. See, learning a second language can be accomplished. It just depends on how much energy, effort, and intention are you going to put into it in order to develop an understanding and the ability to effectively communicate the language that your significant other speaks. Because your language may not be his language, and his language may not be your language. And one of the points that one of the points that Gary Chapman makes in the book is that you need to understand your mate's language so that you can communicate with them. So it's not enough, say it's not enough, to speak my native tongue. It's not enough to speak the language I'm most comfortable with. It's not enough to be unwilling to learn and effectively communicate my mate's language. It will require effort to learn and communicate my significant other's language. So if you're going to develop a second language, if you are going to be able to communicate your significant other's language, do know that it's going to require you to get outside of your comfort zone. Know that it's going to require you to make that relationship a priority. Hear me, please don't miss this. Know that it is going to require you to make the relationship a priority. You might be in a relationship, but that don't mean you're a priority. I want to keep it 5,000. One of the ways that you will know is if you effectively know what you need and you communicate that to your significant other. If they are as committed as you are, then they will learn your language and you all will communicate effectively. One of the things that I did once I got some insight into what my language was, when I'm communicating with my significant other and it don't seem like my language is lining up, I just say out loud, love language. My love language is service. And so if something ain't quite, let me go on this side and say it. If my love language is if it's not being communicated like the way I need it, Judge, I just go ahead and say love language. Don't forget my love language is service. Because I want folk to know that this is my language. And I want us to be able to communicate. Now, it just so happened that I know folk who speak lots of languages fluently. So that means I have to speak a lot of languages. Are you with me? So it's important that we be willing to put the effort in to speaking the language of our significant other. Now let me show you what happens when you try to communicate a love language or a language, when you try to communicate a language with someone and you don't speak the same language. If you've ever been in a foreign country and you were trying to communicate with someone who didn't speak your language, or if you ran into a foreigner here who spoke a different kind of language, and you try to get directions or give them directions, you ever notice how difficult that is? And it requires you to diminish yourself to just pointing, right? There was someone here I'm trying to get just a couple blocks up and around the corner, right? And they showed me where they were trying to go, and I'm saying, just up and around the corner. Just a couple blocks up and around the corner. That's a lot of energy when what I really want to be able to say is whatever the language is. Are you with me? So what my point is, you can waste a lot of energy and effort trying to communicate if you don't speak the same language. All right? So then, what do I want you to do? 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 The first thing I want you to do is I want you to focus on the importance of your emotional intelligence as it relates to your relationships. I want you to focus on the importance of your emotional intelligence when it comes to your relationships. See, because what you feed flourishes. What you feed performs. I love the story about this good old country boy who on every Saturday night used to fight roosters. And he had two roosters. He had a black rooster and he had a red rooster. And every Saturday night they would fight these roosters. And at some point those roosters just spent so much time beating one another up that he retired them. And then sometime after he retired his roosters, he went back to the place where the rooster fights used to happen. And somebody said to him, you know, I noticed every time your roosters fought, when you bet on the black rooster won. He said, but then I also noticed when you bet on the red rooster won. Why is that? And the country boy said, well, it's simple. He said, I fed the one that I was going to bet on. Why? Because what you feed flourishes. What you feed performs. So in the book, one of the things that Gary Chapman says is that we all have an emotional tank. We all have an emotional tank. And one of the things that is the responsibility of the people that we are in relationship with, hear me, one of the responsibilities of the people that we are in relationship with is to be committed to their role in filling up our emotional tank. If you are in relationship, doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, everyone in the relationship has a role and a responsibility in filling the emotional tank of other people in the relationship. Are you with me? So then, how do you fill the tank of someone else? You focus on the kind of love language that is essential to their emotional health in the relationship. All right? All of us have a need for love and affection. All of us want to feel as if we are wanted and respected. And so none of us feels healthy when we are in relationships wherein it does not seem like there is a home for our heart. And so if you are in a relationship where it seems as if the person you are in relationship with has no home for your heart, you have to be able to check your emotional tank. And you have to be able to require them to fill up your emotional tank. How do you help them fill up your emotional tank? You got to know what you want. Now, your responsibility, their responsibility is to help fill up your tank. Your responsibility is to know what you want. You have to know what you want. See, I can't give you what you want if you don't know what it is. And sometimes the way we come to know is by what we don't have, right? So you may not know at the front, but once you get something that you don't want, you at least know you don't want that. Let me say it to you this way. You may not know that you want honesty, but you know that you don't want dishonesty. So you have to know what you want. Now, the challenge for many of us, and can I keep it 1,000? The challenge for many of us, and women pervasively, is that in relationships, we don't always ask for what we want, rather we settle for what we think is available. So you have to know what you want, and you have to also be unwilling to settle for what is just available. Because if you find the wrong cat, he will always give just enough of a little bit of what he wants to give. And so you have to be unwilling and unrelenting in settling for what's available. Are you with me? Because if you expect a little, come on now. Come on. And so you ask for what you want. Know what you want and then ask. And by ask, I don't mean can you, will you. I mean ask like when you go to the conveyor belt to get your luggage at the airport. You know it's yours. You know you deserve it. You know you're the one who put it there to begin with. So I'm not saying ask hoping, I'm saying ask claiming. Because if they can't give you what you want, then they might not be the one that you're supposed to be with. I just want to be 5,000 this morning. I just want to be 5,000. So when we don't ask for what we want, it leads to unsatisfying, unfulfilling, and unhealthy relationships. And when we are in unsatisfying, unfulfilling, unhealthy relationships, we revert back like little children and we start to do things that can be akin to acting out. How do you help someone fill your tank? How do you help someone fill your emotional tank? You help someone fill your tank by seeing them, by seeing your significant other as they are. You help your significant other fill your tank by seeing them as they are. What am I saying? I'm saying we sometimes have a tendency to use our sanctified imagination to make over people that we are in relationship with. Rather than seeing them as they are, we see them as we imagine them to be. And then we begin to place demands on them that they be what we are imagining. But it's really difficult for somebody to be what you are imagining because what you are imagining is not what's playing out in my head. So you want me to be something that's playing out in your head, and what's playing out in my head is what I am right here and right now. And so it's vitally important that we do not ignore the signs that people are showing us when we are in relationship with them, if we expect them to be able to be responsible for filling up our emotional tank. Are you with me? How do you help someone be responsible for filling up your emotional tank? You have to be honest. 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 In relationship, men, like, we have to be honest. If there is something that you cannot do in the relationship, then just be willing to say that, right? If you can't be committed, then just say, I can't be committed. Right? And then leave the power of choice to the person that you are in relationship with. Man, stop looking at me crazy. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Don't give me that side. I don't care. I know I'm one of you too. And I know I'm giving up the jewels. I'm here to help. I don't have no favorites. I get it. But the better you are, the healthier she is, the healthier your children will be. The healthier she is, the healthier your home will be. And you never know, she might be okay with you playing. If you just say it. No judgment. I'm just, listen, I want to keep it 1,000. This is the grown adult series. I'm teaching the kids version of this time next year. This is the adult series. So just be honest. If you don't know the directions and your GPS ain't working, just say, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep driving until I find my way. It's all good. It's all good. Then she just have to sit there and say, I told you to turn, I told you to turn, I told you to turn. I know you told me to turn. I don't listen to that. I listen to my internal GPS. How do you help somebody fill up your tank? You have to be willing to be honest. We all have to be willing to be honest in relationship. So you have to know what you need and you have to communicate what you need. You have to accept people as they are presenting themselves. It's not that they can't get better, but know that you can't make them better. The only person you have the power to improve is you. And then finally, we have to be honest. If there's some aspect of ourselves that we find challenged in, just say that and then commit yourself to being improved. So I'm going to close with that, because I want you to be able to enjoy the kind of relationships you are divinely designed to enjoy. Relationships wherein you are appreciated and celebrated and not just tolerated. One of the ways that you do that is you give it to yourself first, and then you make clear the way for those who are you're in relationship to give it with you, to you. God bless you.